Welcome to Wanderlust Travel and Photos blog.
Good afternoon. So today I'm going to walk you through some really simple edits that you can make to your photos, your travel photos, using either Adobe Lightroom, the desktop application, and most of these functions are also available in the Adobe Lightroom CC mobile app that's available in iOS and on Google Play for Android. So these are very simple edits that can make a really big difference in how your pictures look. So I think a common misconception that's out there is that you really have to be this professional photographer in order to make any really meaningful edits to your photos, and that's just not true. So there's a lot of really simple things that you could do to your photos that make a really big difference, and I'm going to kind of show you a standard workflow that I like to use with a majority of my pictures here today that would be very easy for you to follow this workflow with the right tools, and it can make a really big difference in how your vacation photos look. So I'm going to use as my example this picture that I took this year when we were out in Nova Scotia on Cape Breton at Cabot Links Golf Links out there in Nova Scotia. And as you can see, and it doesn't take a trained eye to notice, there are some problems with this image. First of all, you can see that really hard to see our faces here because they're obscured by shadows. You can also see that the sky is kind of washed out because it was really midday when we took this photo. And as I've told you guys in some of my Art of Travel photography series, is that taking photos midday is not the optimal time to take photographs, and this kind of illustrates why. It really washes out the colors. So not only is the sky kind of bland and washed out, but you can see, a lot of the other colors really aren't very vibrant. They're not what I saw with my own eyes when I was there, and that's kind of what the goal with photography is to really try to mirror the experience that you actually saw and make your photographs as accurately as possible represent those. So we're going to kind of fix all these things. The other thing that you can see here is really easy to see is I had a lens hood on, again, because it was midday and the sun was pretty bright. And that lens hood got kind of captured in the corners here. So that kind of also makes this photograph a little bit less than ideal. So we'll take care of that as well. So I'm going to walk through the process. And the first process, obviously, is to get your hands on Adobe Lightroom, the desktop application, or Adobe Lightroom CC, the mobile application. The mobile application, from what my experience with it is it's been a free app. You don't get all of the features. There are some that you need to subscribe to get some of the advanced features. But the features that I'm going to walk you through here today, you should be able to access with the mobile app for no charge. So again, the really basic edits that we're going to make. The other thing you can use Adobe Lightroom, the desktop application, and that's what I have up here on the screen today, and that's what I'm going to use for my demonstration here today. And with Adobe Lightroom desktop, it's a subscription, so you're paying $9.99 a month, and that will get you access to Adobe Lightroom, and it'll come with all the updates that they make to the application and whatnot. So definitely worth the money, in my opinion. It is probably the application I use by far the most in photography, even more than like Photoshop. It's a really great application. So once you have Adobe Lightroom, the first thing you want to do is get your photo into Lightroom. And I already have it in here, but what you would do is you would go to the File menu and then go to Import Photos and Video. And then you can come here, browse to where your video is. For instance, mine is in this Nova Scotia folder. Select the images that you want to import and then hit import. I'm going to hit cancel since they're already in there. And then you'll be able to see it show up in your library. From there, I can go to the Develop tab. That's where we're going to do all of these edits under the Develop tab. And I can select my image from the film strip of images that are below. Once I have that selected, the first thing I want to do is I want to lift these shadows and I want to control the highlights. And the highlights, again, are the blown out areas where there was basically too much light exposed and things that got too bright so that there's very little detail. And shadows are kind of the opposite. Things are too dark, so there's very little detail shown because it's so dark. So you can't really see all the details of our faces because the shadows are too dominant. and then the highlights are kind of washing out the sky. So I know this was a pretty blown out image because I was there when I took it. I knew it was really bright. So I'm going to reduce highlights completely, and you see it makes a little bit of a difference. As we start making some of these other edits coming forward, that change is going to, along with some of these other edits, really make a difference with the sky. And then I'm also going to lighten up those shadows by choosing the shadows slider, and I'm going to really lighten that up. So now you can see there's a lot more detail in our face than if I had not done this. And you look here, detail, but not as much. So we're going to lighten this up so that we really can see our faces. So that's the first step, is to control your highlights and shadows. And keep in mind, every photo is going to be different. So in some photos, you might not need to, control the highlights hardly at all. In some, you might have to, like this one, control them a lot. And same thing for shadows. On some photos, there might need to be a lot of detail that you need to restore in shadows, and on others, there may not be a lot at all. So once I've got that done, the next thing I want to do is I want to adjust the white balance. And if you have been reading my Art of Travel photography series, you'll know that the white balance is the balance of the colors in your image. So again, we want to try to match the colors that we see here, their vibrancy and everything, with what we saw when we actually took the photo. And so with the white balance, I can go ahead and I can adjust based on the time of day that I took it, or what the light settings were. And I took this in daylight. And so I'm going to set this to daylight. I could, if this was a cloudy day, I could change it to cloudy. If I took it in the shade. If I took this under fluorescent lights, I could change that. That's all going to adjust the coloring so that it matches what you actually saw, or the condition. The other thing that's down here under camera calibration, I'm going to adjust, and I'm going to change this to a landscape setting. And you can see that already. All of those settings already made a huge difference in how my photo looks. So I know this is a landscape shot. I could also do a portrait shot if I'm taking this just as a portrait. That might actually be better because we have some portrait images of people in this, but if it was strictly a landscape, I could change it to that as well. I actually like the landscape look. It makes the sky a little bit bluer, and I like that. So I'll go ahead and I'll change that, and that is kind of the second step, is to adjust the white balance and then adjust the camera calibration. And once I have those two steps done, the next thing I want to do is I want to adjust the vibrance and the saturation. And again, this is really to try to make the colors appear more like they were when I saw them. And so I want to bump these up a little. I don't want to bump them up too much, because you can see if I get too carried away with it, it starts to look really, fakeish. But I want to make this a little bit more vibrant. It doesn't need to be a little bit more saturated, just so those colors really pop a little bit more. Because when we were there, the greens of the fairways are just beautifully contrasted against the blue sky and the blue ocean. And, you really want to bring that out in your photo, and that kind of helps you do that. So I just tweak these a little bit. Again, I'm going to bump these up just a tad and bring these both to +4. And that'll kind of give me a little bit more vibrant look. And then once I have that done, the next thing I want to do is go ahead and crop. And to crop, I'm going to do two things. I'm going to eliminate these blemishes in the corners. I'm also going to straighten the horizon. I want my horizon to be straight. And then I'm going to zoom in a little bit so that brings us a little bit closer, so that we're not quite as far away from the camera. So to do that, number one, I can make my image smaller and zoomed in. And I can go ahead and adjust by moving it around. And so I'm going to bring this down, and I want to right about like that. And then I can come in here, go to the bottom, and you can see how the little mouse pointer turns into the double-sided arrow. And I can do that to kind of adjust the rotation. So I would basically want to get my horizon so that it's level. And you can see this line with the horizon. I have to adjust a little bit more. Yeah, it looks pretty level. And I'll hit done, and you can see it brings us a little bit closer, and goes ahead and makes that horizon level and everything like that. So those are just some basic edits that you can make to your photos that really do a good job of bringing out some of the detail that might be lost in your photos. It makes the colors a little bit more vibrant, a little bit more natural, and looks a little bit more like they were when you take the shot. And then you can kind of use the cropping tool to kind of crop out any blemishes on the side, straighten out your photos and whatnot. So all of those edits can make a really big difference in how your photos look. Thank you for watching.
Thanks for watching. Make sure to follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram.